certainly can take all of the seats. Dear friends, we gather this afternoon to remember and to celebrate the life of one who filled our world with her love, her artistry, her creativity, her spirit, and example. In humility and gratitude, we turn to the wisdom of our tradition for comfort, for guidance, and for understanding. Throughout the centuries, whenever our people felt lost, confused, bereaved, they would turn to the words of Psalms for comfort and for understanding. They turned especially to Psalm 121, Esa'inai al Harim, Ma'ayin Yavo Ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and of earth. Esa'inai el Harim, Ma'ayin Yavo Ezri. Esa'inai el Harim, Ma'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai, osei shamayim v'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai, osei shamayim v'aretz. Esa'inai el Harim, Ma'ayin Yavo Ezri. Another psalm that was very comforting, especially at times like these, is Psalm 23. And for those of you for whom it might be familiar, I invite you to join me in its recitation. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. My dear Diane and Bob, dear Mark and Carol, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When Armine was 19 years old, a young man literally gazed across a crowded room at the Euclid Avenue Temple dance and spotted her. The next day, he called. When her mother Gladys told her that Jack Diamond was on the phone, Armine asked, is it the skinny Jack Diamond or the hot Jack Diamond? Even though it was ostensibly the less desirable skinny Jack Diamond, Armine took the call, and thus began the happiest, most romantic, and most exciting years of Armine's remarkable 101 years of life. She was not an easy customer. Jack wooed her, and wooed her, and wooed her mother with her, until Armine finally said yes, and he became not only the love of her life, he also became the best son-in-law to Gladys and Morris. It was a wartime romance and marriage. As Jack had enlisted in officers' training school, he was soon stationed stateside in New York as a captain in charge of refurbishing United States ships. As soon as a torpedoed or damaged ship came in, Jack sent a refurbished one back out. They lived in a tiny first-floor apartment and must have seemed just like countless other wartime couples. In fact, there was a part of Armine that was entirely conventional. She was an excellent cook and homemaker. Before she married, she had been like a mother to her younger brother by 12 years, Roger. Armine adored him and had helped to raise him. As a woman of her time, she was adept at and expected to live a life of domesticity. If we look a bit closer, however, we find hints of and clues to a somewhat different reality. When Jack met Armine, she was a student at the Cleveland Institute of Art. When he was serving, she simultaneously attended the Art Students League of New York. In fact, she would paint outside from time to time, wearing a kind of halter-top skirt, for which she was actually arrested for indecent exposure. It seems that skinny Jack Diamond, who was several years older than Armine, cut a rather dashing figure in his captain's uniform, so that when he walked into the courtroom with his wife, the charges were dropped. She was beautiful, and they made a handsome couple. When the war was over, it was hard for Armine to leave the museums, galleries, theater, and music of New York. Whenever she returned throughout the years, especially with her children, Diane and Mark could always count on visiting the museums and even being treated to a show. And even though Jack was not wealthy, whenever they came to New York, they stayed at the Plaza Hotel. It may have been in partial tribute to Armine's father, Maurice, who as a young immigrant escaped from Russia, went to work as a butler at the Plaza when the great opera singer, the tenor Enrico Caruso, was living there. As a lover of the arts, Maurice worked his way into becoming Caruso's personal valet. When Maurice was 16, Caruso left the Plaza, but gifted a Steinway grand piano to Maurice. Maurice sold the piano, and with the proceeds, he was able to travel across the country to Berkeley, where he earned his degree as a chemist. On his way back east to take a job with the government in the chemical warfare department, he stopped in Cleveland, spotted Gladys Hertz on Berkshire Boulevard, and, as would happen a generation later, wooed her on the spot. This time, however, it was with his mandolin. They were married that week, and Gladys went off happily with Maurice to Washington, D.C. Armine was clearly born with artistry, creativity, a sense of wonder, and even of romance in her DNA. When Jack came home every night for dinner, he took her in his arms and kissed her in a swoon-like embrace, usually reserved for movie scenes and photographs. Every night. She was also raised with the value of education as predominant. Her brother Roger became a pediatric cardiologist and pursued his career in Indiana with wife Fran and children Andrew and Valerie. Jack also intended to become a physician, but in the aftermath of the war, his brothers, Joe, Norman, and Herb, decided to go into the men's clothing business as Diamond Brothers, where generations of Cleveland's men and boys were outfitted. Unfortunately, that left very little money to support a medical student, and Jack went into accounting instead. He seems to have taken the change in his career plans in his stride, as he provided for his family, made sure that Armine had a studio next to the house, encouraged Diane's prodigious intellect and athleticism, as well as Mark's academic excellence, interest, and football prowess. Jack provided balance and a somewhat worldly, that's what they told me, I'm sorry. Listen, it's okay. You played football for Shaker Heights High. Is that
no, I'm talking about never.
Okay, oh, it was something else, okay. We'll get it straight after. Jack provided balance and a somewhat more lenient attitude to Armine's perfectionism and exacting nature. She was an artist. Even a cursory introduction to her paintings, sketches, Pettipoint, needlepoint, sculpture, pastels, watercolors, knitting, and crocheting reveals a remarkable talent with a passionate appreciation for the artistry of nature in all of its spectacular variety and the artistry of such giants as Gustave Caillebotte, Auguste Renoir, Edgar Degas, and Claude Monet, to name but a few of those who influenced her eye and her style. While she lived very much within the confines of her time and never mounted a show of her work, except in very limited ways, it is hard to imagine that she did not chafe at the constraints on her activities, even if they were self-imposed. I imagine that the demands she placed on herself spilled over to her loved ones. Her artist sensibility must have struggled with feeling good enough, accomplished enough, talented enough. Her frustration with her own imperfection may have caused her to seek perfection in others. Perfectionism it is an always elusive and always desired goal, particularly in an artist. It probably did not help that she was something of an introvert, without the charm and effusiveness of her beloved Jack, whose outgoing nature brought her comfort and joy and pushed her beyond her more reticent boundaries. Most everything she did well. She kept a beautiful home, and a generation later helped Diane design her most beautiful home, replete with some of Armine's artistic creations, as well as Diane's own, as she learned well at her mother's side, to knit and sew, to see and appreciate quality, style, spatial relationships, and the fundamentals of design. Virtually every member of the Diamond family has inherited something of Armine's talent and or her admiration for intellect, skill, and expertise. She was a wonderful cook whose brisket, noodle pudding, and soups made every Jewish and secular holiday a special occasion of family gathering and celebration. She never played cards. She learned to golf and played at Hawthorne Country Club and in West Palm Beach during the winters. She organized the Hawthorne art shows every summer. She and Jack played bowling with a group from Fairmont Temple, where Jack was active in our men's club, and Armine enjoyed the sisterhood. She would do centerpieces and decorations for a myriad of lunches and programs. Her parents had belonged to the Euclid Avenue Temple, where Armine grew up. She and Jack enjoyed traveling to Europe on cruises to Florida every winter, and Armine traveled a bit with Diane and Dick after Jack died. She was not particularly warm and fuzzy. She was straightforward, somewhat matter-of-fact, said what was on her mind, and was an always steady and steadfast presence in her family's life. In keeping with her refined taste and appreciation of quality, she and Jack sent both children to wonderful camps, excellent schools, and Armine shopped at Bonwood Teller for herself and Diane. They had a series of Springer Spaniels, which she loved, and a house that always welcomed Diane and Mark's friends, and special friends, as Dick Collier came into Diane's life, and Deborah into Mark's, with grandchildren to follow. Everyone who knew them knew that Jack lit up the world for Armine, and that a light went out in her soul when he passed away 28 years ago. Despite that grievous loss for her, which left a painful void, the grandchildren, whom they had welcomed together, never failed to bring a smile to her face and delight to her heart, as Brandon, Nikki, Brooke, Gabby, Daniel, Alex, and Jed arrived to expand their family circle and enliven every gathering with their exuberance and high spirits. It was a special treat for grandchildren and grandparents when the families would visit Florida, which offered a perfect opportunity for them to interact in special and even adventurous ways. Armine was at her most creative and even mischievous with the grandchildren. One memorable Halloween, Armine dressed up as a bandit red bandana, guns and all, to the delighted fright and delight of the grandchildren. It was particularly bittersweet for Armine to embrace the next generation of her family without Jack by her side, as Brandon and Juan brought Jasmine, Lily, and Caroline into the family, as Nikki and Brad welcomed Reese, Paige, and Everett, Brooke and Sean had Shane and Emmett, while Gabby and Ashley had Noah and Piper. Armine rejoiced with Mark when Carol Maddow came into his life, and when Alex and Lindsay welcomed Dorian. Just a year ago, at the age of 100, when she heard the news of Dash's arrival into Daniel and Alicia's family, she quipped, "He must be Speedy." She was grateful as well when Diane found life and light again with Bob Gura after the tragic loss of Dick. Particularly during these last years, Bob has been supportively at Diane's side. As child on the ground, Diane was on call for her mother pretty much 24/7 for whatever she might need, with backup from the grandchildren when Diane was out of town. And when the time came, with love and tenderness and care, you were with her as she drew her final breaths. You accompanied her to the portals of this life. And now she is at rest. We derive comfort from the fact that she suffers no longer, neither infirmity of the body or yearning of the soul. We can imagine that she is reunited with Jack, safely and happily enveloped by the arms of her beloved. We are warmed by and grateful for the extraordinary legacy she has left to us, a legacy of family and faith, of artistry and creativity, of taste and refinement. Each of us possesses something of her in a painting, a drawing, a pillow, a scarf, an afghan, something that came directly from her hands and heart. We will now cherish the tangible vestiges of her, even as we are comforted, sustained, and inspired by her cherished memory. Zichrona livracha. May she be remembered always for blessing. And we say, Amen. We have already begun to learn that in the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, in the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. And I know that both Mark and Brandon have reminiscences to share with us. And Nikki as well? Yeah, you have to be careful of those chairs.
Sarah, thank you so much. I think you really encapsulated my mom's life and her parents before her and those that came after. And I think my mom would be very, and I know she was very proud of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and at least one of her children. But she had a good run. We all agreed at 101. We all would love to have that opportunity. Quality of life, I think, towards the end was not what one would want, but I know she still enjoyed this past summer the chance to go out for a ride in the country and see the trees and think about life and the natural world. You know, she was inspired by that and her paintings and so on. And we're going to miss her. We're going to miss her. And now things seem to have come full circle because she'll be next to my dad. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since my dad passed. That's somewhat mind-numbing for me. But thank you all for being here, and again, Sarah, thanks for your kind words. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll just mention a couple things. Sarah and Diane, I know, collaboration really came up with a great encapsulation of Armine's life. A couple things that weren't said were her love and affection for Fairmount Temple, which she'd been a member of since its founding, and multiple generations of family at Fairmount. But and Mark said a lot of what I had in mind too. The last few years have been difficult for her, and but it doesn't take away the good times, particularly prior to 1995 when Jack was with her, and all those memories. They're still quite deep. Going to their homes for holidays, having them over for holidays, racing through their house with the dog, visiting them down in Florida. I don't know, one little anecdote about a Florida trip was, for whatever reason, I think this was in the mid to late 90s, so Grandpa Jack had already passed away. She was still going down to Florida. I was down there by myself for some reason. I don't remember the details, and I think she picked me up. So she was driving pretty much until her late 80s, which was maybe not the smartest thing, but she was kind of ornery and stubborn, and nobody had the nerve to really yank the keys away from her. But she was still fairly, she was sharp at that point. She picked me up, I think, at the airport. It was a car rental return, and she had a green Buick LeSabre, tan leather interior. She picked me up, and she came in the wrong entrance. I went in the car and I said, we got to go out this way. But she put the car in reverse, and all four wheels went over those teeth that will puncture your tires. So she had 4 flat tires. What happened? She was not the primary driver in the family. So for the next couple hours, we waited for AAA to get there and went down, spent a little bit of time at a West Palm Beach car repair shop. But she still had her spunkiness all the way through, even after Grandpa was gone. The best memories were from earlier, but even up until the last couple of years, once you got into conversations with her, not about recent things, but about more distant things, it was pretty much as sharp as ever. Which, and there's still jokes and little quips, and the spark was still there. It faded towards the end, but it was still there really until the end. So, Grandma, we love you. We're all here with you. It's the end of a wonderful long journey, and it's finally you're reunited with who you're meant to be. So, thanks everybody for coming, and Sarah, again, thanks so much.
Great story.
Mine's really short because I know people have to get moving out of here. But I found a quote that reminded me of Grandma and her life. And I don't know who wrote it, but I liked it nonetheless. So it says, "You will find as you look back upon your life that the moments that stand out above everything else are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love." And I just wanted to say, Grandma expressed her love for us in the most creative ways, whether that was through a delicious meal where everything always tasted better at her house, even if it was the same recipe I would make, it always tasted better at her house. A thoughtfully written letter, and I have so many of them over the years, or a delightfully painted oil painting. She made our world more beautiful, and that's how I'll always choose to remember her.
Thank you all for those evocative memories that are so wonderful. Oh God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort, and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. Please rise. רחמים שוכן במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קדושים וטהורים כזור רקיע מזהירים את נשמת היקרה שלנו שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתירה בספק כנפיו לעולמים. בישרו חיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה. ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Armine Diamond, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
You can leave.
Oh, we'll get him.
The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the spirit which we now lay within the earth. The spirit itself cannot die. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Armine Diamond. Grant her that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat now the words hallowed by generations of our people in the Kaddish praise. Yitkada v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'oma divrach dirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei b'chol beit Yisrael, v'agalah v'zman hari v'imru. Amen. Yehi shemei rabah mevarach l'olam l'omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitka'ar Yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalam, shemei d'kiddushah v'yichu, le'ela v'yichol v'chata v'shirata, tushvachata v'nechemata, ta'miran v'omam, v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shmaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. V'seh shalom v'mamah, Ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. It is part of the tradition of our people to actually help to bury our departed with our very own hands. And for those for whom it would have meaning to symbolically place a shovel full of dirt upon the gravesite, I invite you to do so at this time.